Hello, everyone, and you're very welcome to our 11:30 series here as part of our business and retail event as part of the DKT Virtual Career Series. And we are truly delighted to be able to welcome to this session Enterprise Ireland. Enterprise Ireland is such a common name among those of us who work in the education sector, but also those of us who are wanting to progress our career in business and other areas as well. And today we're joined by Sean Walsh and Johnny Nagel, who will take you through both of their experiences from the perspective of the graduate programs and the client skills and the grad start programs as well. I'll just encourage each of you to who is participating live to really get involved by asking questions or posting comments in the chat and questions function. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Sean, who's going to take you through the presentation. Thanks, Sean.
Super. Thanks, Catherine. That's great. Can you see my screen okay there?
Yeah, perfect.
Perfect. So yeah, thanks a million, folks, for joining us today. Delighted to be asked in by Catherine and DKIT to speak to yourselves. So what I'll do is give you a bit of an overview, I suppose, to Enterprise Ireland and who we are. And then more specifically, I'll jump into the graduate program, and I suppose some of you may be interested in applying for our programs, after which Johnny will then take over and run you through the grad start initiatives, which is kind of our piece with our client companies. So a brief intro, I suppose. I'm Sean Walsh and I'm the graduate program manager in Enterprise Ireland. Bit of a background, I suppose. I studied entrepreneurship in Maynooth University while on a golf scholarship, would have graduated back in 2017. And like many students kind of coming out of college, hadn't the notion of where I wanted to go or what I wanted to do afterwards. I fell into a tech sales role initially straight after graduation. And I suppose there's a lot of pros and cons to employers, and working 70 hours a week on sales wasn't something that I wanted to continue to do. So I suppose after that, I looked to find a graduate program and stumbled across Enterprise Ireland. I would have been somewhat familiar with Enterprise Ireland through entrepreneurship in university and heard a lot how they help businesses. But I suppose I went for the application, and I suppose after a number of months, I joined the program in 2018. After which, I suppose I started in a variety of roles. So I started initially in a change management role, which would kind of involve a lot of project work, internally focused. And so as somebody that didn't know what they wanted to do, it was a great kind of kickstart in terms of just experiencing different departments on the national program and kind of getting a feel for, I like this side of the business, don't like this so much. So that was really good. And I went from there into our learning and development department, would have helped on the graduate program. Went then into grant management when COVID hit. We had obviously a lot of businesses nearly going to the wall, and the volume was huge. I was asked if I'd reassign in there. Again, learned a huge amount for 16 months. And then most recently now I manage the graduate programs, both national and international. That revolves around, we've 58 graduates overseas and in Ireland, in Dublin. So it involves managing everything from obviously inducting them, onboarding them, training, developing, obviously engaging with third levels, and then a variety of recruitment campaigns, as you can imagine. So that's a brief intro to myself. In terms of Enterprise Ireland, if you're not familiar with us, I suppose we're the government agency that's responsible for developing Irish businesses in world markets. So you might have heard of the IDA as well. So there are other sister agency who kind of focus on bringing foreign direct investment in. So the likes of Facebook, the Google, they look after bringing companies into Ireland, whereas we look after bringing Irish businesses abroad. So it's kind of all about helping Irish businesses to start, grow and compete on the international stage. And I suppose in this way, it's how we kind of help regional development in Ireland and create jobs, and obviously sustaining, economic growth as well. So as you'll see here in the slides, we've nearly over 220,000 people employed in Enterprise Ireland backed companies. So, there's quite a significant role we play from all across the country. And, it's something we're very proud of, and helping Irish companies grow is a huge passion. And it's certainly something that attracted me to the agency. In terms of our deal count, we're one of the largest venture capitals in the world. So we invest a lot in companies and in startups, so a lot of equity. And I suppose a bit of a background to the agency, we've about 800 employees at the moment, 200 of which are based in our overseas offices. So we've 40 overseas offices. And then the remaining are based either in the Dublin HQ or else scattered around our regional offices. So quick bit on the employment. Like I mentioned, the jobs supported last year in 2020 results, there was 65% total employment outside of Dublin. So there was a growth outside of the capital, which is great. Obviously, we've all faced a lot of challenges, both personally and professionally. COVID was a huge one for our clients, and you can see there we provided 142 million specifically in COVID-19 support. So the volume was relentless, and a lot of businesses needed us most last year, and it's been great to see we've made a difference on that front. In terms of the challenges, like I mentioned, COVID-19 is one, Brexit has and still is another, and then you'll all be familiar with the climate agenda, and with new departments even formed in Enterprise Ireland. So I think between COVID, Brexit, and climate, they're kind of the three main macro challenges that we face. So I suppose if you are looking into Enterprise Ireland, or you're looking at our grad program and you're applying and you're wondering, right, what are the type of challenges or what are the type of things that could be working on, there are some of the issues that are at the forefront at the moment. So I suppose I'll lead on then to the graduate programs, which you probably find most interesting. In Enterprise Ireland, we run a graduate program from a national perspective and an international perspective. So we run a 2-year placement. So obviously grads in the national graduate program work out of the Dublin HQ, and they can work in a variety of roles, internal and external, in terms of client-facing or non-client facing. And then our international program places grads in one of our 40 overseas offices. So just to let you know, as a bit of a plug, our applications are open. They opened on the 27th of September, just gone, and they're open until the end of this month. So visit the careers page. You can. I'm sure these slides will be circulated after. You can click that hyperlink, and if you've any questions, feel free to reach out to myself. But a bit more specifically, the national program grads will be development executives. So this is what the program I would have gone under. And worked in Dublin in the HQ, and I suppose most recently we're kind of remote and hybrid. But over the 2 years, you get to work on a huge amount of different projects, roles, whether you're client facing or not client facing. You'll see down the right side there some of the departments that are involved in the national program. As I said, you can be assigned for internal departments like policy or HR. Marketing communications, we've graduates in all of those posts, or else you could be placed in a client-facing role like Johnny here, where you're kind of getting involved with client companies, whether it's through skills like Johnny, or whether it's through kind of sectoral areas, whether you could be working with technology companies, you could be working with startups, construction, food companies. So really vast array of opportunities, and it's really good to get that exposure so early on in your career. Kind of, I suppose, leans on you. You kind of figure out which you like and which you don't like in terms of sectors or client work or non-client work. So that's the overview, I suppose, of the national side of things. And then the international program, you're assigned as a market executive in one of the 40 overseas offices. So I suppose that the role the international people play in Enterprise Ireland is to help Irish businesses kind of, I suppose, understand the local landscape and build networks, create, I suppose, opportunities for Irish client companies who are looking to export their products and services into, say, Spain. The Spanish market executive will try to build a network to get Spanish buyers to source from Ireland. And so I suppose, the international grads really get to travel a lot of networking and running events, trade missions with ministers. And I suppose, they really help Irish companies grow internationally and keep that link then with our home office as well. And just to note, grads on the international program do receive additional living allowances, because that's often the question, like, okay, I'm assigned to San Francisco. How can I afford that? Each office has different allowances and living accommodation relative to the cost of living in that country. So that's something to note. And if you're wondering, can you apply for both the national program and the international program? You absolutely can. And it's something we advise, given the volume of applications. And sometimes it's a case of you might get offered one over the other, or if you don't have a language, you mightn't get the Spanish role, but you might be offered something else. So that's an overview, I suppose, of the international program. Just a few testimonials. You can have a look at these in detail, but we've Kathy there who's in Dusseldorf. Gary is in the equity team in East Point in Dublin. David is in HR in Dublin, and then Emma is over in Toronto. So there are a couple of our current grads who give testimonials. And if you keep an eye on our social channels on LinkedIn and Twitter and all, you'll probably see a lot of these being posted and videos and whatnot. But yeah, look, we've a really strong cohort of grads every year, and it's great to have, I suppose, a network as you start your careers. That's something I found really good as a past grad, is starting with 30 other graduates in the same position, some of whom are going abroad, some are staying at home, and having that kind of group and cohort to liaise with throughout your career is really, really useful. In terms of requirements, you're probably wondering, what do I have to do to apply? There's some basic requirements like many grad programs around, I suppose. We look for a minimum 2.2 and a level 8. To be honest, there's a lot of different degree. We get people from all sorts of backgrounds. Traditionally, business, entrepreneurship, marketing, that kind of thing is usually an advantage, but that's not to say we've plenty of people from social sciences, we've people from arts degrees, obviously we've people from law, a variety of food, a lot of different backgrounds. So it's really up to your application in terms of having a strong application form in, and then being able to work your way through the assessment centres appropriately. You have to complete your degree between January 2020 and September 2022, and must be available then to start next August/September. So that's for this current cohort. And then you have to have, I suppose, an Irish contract. You have to be able to work for under 2 years duration and have English fluently. Tips, I suppose, because the applications, I suppose, there's a lot of graduate programs, and we get a lot of graduates that, might be applying for 10 or 12 others, and it is noticeable on your application form. So I would say if you're applying, understand who Enterprise Ireland are, what we do, show your motivation for why you want to work for Enterprise Ireland, the skills you can bring, give 100% at each stage. And I'd say, definitely include things like Erasmus, work experience, sports, hobbies, charity work, any extracurricular stuff you're involved in. That's, heavily weighted as well. And yeah, if you have LinkedIn, update it if possible. There are some of the timelines. These can all be found on our site, on the grad site, in terms of, the opening date, the closing date for applications for this year. And then there are all the kind of different assessments throughout the course of a few months that you have to undergo to get the offer. So yeah, look, it's a long process, but the more you get involved, the more you kind of want it, and the more you get a feel for the agency, and the cream rises to the top, I guess they say. So it is worth putting your time into. Lastly, just for myself, thanks again for listening. And if you're on LinkedIn or you want to reach out, you can reach out to me there at the graduate email if you have any questions, or else feel free to connect on LinkedIn, and be happy to help, whether it's EI grad program or even if it's just your own career development. Feel free to give me a shout. That's all from me, folks.
That's great, Sean. Thanks very much. You can see I've just jumped into somebody else's seat because my internet was a bit glitchy. But so it's still Catherine, not Anthony. But we'll keep going. Yeah. So that's great, Sean. I'm aware that the pressures on students now in terms of these closing dates for the graduate programs, and you mentioned there some tips around those graduate programs, and the need to maybe prepare and know about what Enterprise Ireland is, and you gave us a great insight into that. So people now, when you're listening live, maybe think about some questions around maybe those applications, and when we have Sean available to us today to maybe pose any particular questions around that. But we might move on to Johnny now and then take questions at the end for both. Johnny, are you happy to take on from there?
Yeah, I'm good to go. I'll just stick up my presentation here.
Yeah, you can see that, Johnny.
So my name's Johnny Nagel. I work in the client skills department. So I'll just give you a quick background. My master's degree is in kind of entrepreneurship. So following on from that, I kind of went abroad to work for a year before I joined Enterprise Ireland. So I think that probably gave me a bit of an advantage, kind of just talking about some sort of the criteria that Sean Walsh was talking about there, about what they look for. It's always good to get a bit of experience before you go into the national or the international program as well. But I joined the client management development program, so I'm in the client skills section of that. So we run two programs really. We run the Grad Start initiative, which is a company support, which I'll talk about today. And then we also run the Spotlight and Skills workforce planning program as well. So that works with companies to build their capability over kind of 1 to 5 years going forward as they try to build their strategy and look for what skills they're going to need kind of in the future. But I'll just kick off anyway, just to talk about Grad Start. So Grad Start is designed to connect top graduate talent with dynamic Irish SMEs. So the graduate placement is sort of a 24-month duration during which you'll receive a salary from your host company. While completing this 24-month placement, you'll complete a project defined by the company that will link you to the role that you've been assigned. During your placement, you'll be assigned an in-company mentor to work with you on the project. In addition to working with you on your assigned project, this mentor will be there to support you in your development throughout your time in those 24 months. So the objective of Grad Start is sort of to assist SMEs to scale and grow their businesses through the introduction of top graduate talent to deliver clearly defined projects. So new graduates can bring fresh ideas, they challenge the way things are done, they stimulate innovation, and they bring a new perspective on products, processes, and business models. It offers support to enterprise Ireland client companies with ambitious growth plans to hire up to 3 graduates at any one time for a graduate contract duration of 2 years. So it's a broad-based graduate placement across all disciplines and sectors. So we get food companies, we get engineering companies, we get clean tech companies, and they basically take on a graduate for 2 years. They're assigned a mentor, they're given a project, and basically what we do is support half that salary. That's kind of the main gist about what we do. So the company applies for it themselves through their development advisor in Enterprise Ireland. We'll assess their application, and then we'll decide on whether they're appropriate for it. So just to go through sort of some of the key benefits of it. So it allows companies to attract top graduate talent. It allows companies to build their capability. But it also it's really important for particularly small Irish SMEs to kind of bring in young people, kind of to stimulate kind of innovative thinking and to get companies thinking in different ways of doing processes. And that's always really good to see young Irish talent go into SMEs, particularly because of how competitive, say, the multinational sector is. So at the moment, what you'll find is when you go to graduate from Dundalk or you graduate from UCD or Trinity or whatever, you'll find that a lot of the multinationals tend to attract those graduates to those top roles. So Irish SMEs kind of miss out on some of that young talent. So, Grad Start is a really good way of kind of like leveling the playing field in that regard. So, and we love to see that happen kind of with our client companies. So here's just go through the kind of the key elements. So it's a 24-month placement program with a 50% salary support of up to a max of 30k per annum. So we give a grant aid of max 15k. So if you're on 28 or whatever like that, we'll give up to 14. If you're on 30, we'll give up to 15. In the case that the role is specific to a language proficiency, we'll give a 70% salary support. So if you take on a role that requires you to be able to speak French or German or Russian, we provide for that as well with a 70% salary support. So say if you applied for a 30k role, we'll provide up to 21 basically for that. So just some of the key things there. Graduates must have a minimum level 6 qualification on the national framework of qualifications. That's kind of the bar we set. And then graduates must have graduated in the last 4 years. So at the moment, you kind of have to have graduated in 2017, 2018 in order to be eligible for the Grad Start program. And it's available to all ages. You can be a mature student, you can be just out of college. We don't put an age requirement on that. And just on the client eligibility, for SMEs and large companies, they can have 3 graduates on their books. So you can apply for 3 Grad Start supports at any one time if you're an SME or a large company. And if you're a HBSU, so HBSU is a kind of a high performance startup, you can only have 1 graduate at any time. And if you're a Leo company, so a small sort of domestic Irish business, you can that doesn't really export, you can have 1 graduate at any time. So there is a lot of leeway there. The only thing that we do say is that if the client company that's hiring you has their own graduate program, obviously we can't provide support for that. So if they have their own graduate program, they're not eligible. But if they're a large company that doesn't run a graduate program and want to avail of Grad Start, they're more than free to apply for it. So just the graduate eligibility, just to go back to that again. So it's a minimum level 6. You have to have qualified in the last 4 years. And then just on visa requirements, where a visa is required, the graduate must have a minimum 1-year visa to work in Ireland, with an option to renew that visa to allow them to complete their 2-year contract. So just, it's the same basically with any job role that you'd apply for. We do require that 1-year working visa. So the company benefits, are kind of numerous. It facilitates client companies to effectively compete for graduate talent. It embeds capability. It's a great salary support, a great kind of equal playing field for small Irish businesses to be able to kind of take on graduates as opposed to multinationals. And it also is very good for kind of graduates moving into new areas of business. We've talked a little bit about how, you might come from an arts background and go into the Enterprise in Ireland national program. It's great for Irish companies as well. You might get graduates who aren't maybe specific to the role that they're going into. They might be given a project that's kind of innovative and nimble. And I think that's always a great thing about the Grad Start program, that project element to it. And then just on the graduate benefits, there's a wide range of Indigenous kind of growth orientated companies that are looking to export abroad, that are looking to bring on more exciting talent. I think a good thing to point out, and I think it's not said enough, is that when you're a graduate and you go into a small Irish company or a large Irish company instead of a multinational, you're given a lot more responsibility kind of from the onset. So even though you're only there for 2 years, there'll be quite a lot of Irish companies that decide to keep on their graduates and give them more senior roles after it. So I think it's always a great thing to tell young people that, you don't necessarily need to go for those big multinational roles when you're coming out of college. Sometimes it's very good to go for an Irish company where you'll actually learn a lot more. You'll get a lot more skills, and you'll just sort of move up the food chain, so to speak, much quicker, And then just on the language proficiency. So if your company does decide to apply for a grant and you're going for the language proficiency of 70% support, you kind of have to hold a diploma in the required language or have lived in the country for 6 months. There has to be some proof of the fact that you can obviously speak that language. So that, this is kind of, standard enough stuff, but sometimes, we put down kind of business development roles of people who have lived there, but they maybe don't actually have a qualification in the language, or aren't like a native speaker. And just a big thing with the eligibility requirements is that none of the roles can be sales or marketing roles. So that's a really important thing to remember, because it does trip up people quite a bit. If you do avail of the Grad Start program as an Irish company, it can't be for a sales or marketing role. That's really important, just because of EU state aid rules, and that comes up quite a bit. So once you're approved, once your Grad Start application is approved, we then kind of stick it up on gradhub.ie, which is our site. But we also advertise the role for Grad Ireland as well. So if a lot of the time when people apply for the Grad Start, they've already chosen the person that they want to fill the role. So a lot of the time we don't actually have to advertise it. But if a company does want to advertise it on Grad Hub or Grad Ireland, they're more than welcome to do that as well. So yeah, this is just some numbers. So we've 318 companies avail of it and 577 roles placed, and that's as of September. So just a few of the roles there, business analysts, finance, accountants, engineers, food technologists, really wide-reaching roles that across the board. And it's really good to see like companies availing of that support, because it's a fantastic way for companies to bring on young people at sort of basically at a discount. So just some graduate feedback there. Rachel Corcoran, she went into Port West in business development, and then Aaron as well, who went into Softtrace. And they both had fantastic careers since then when they went through the Grad Start program, and it's allowed them to sort of stay in Irish companies and not move in a different direction. So that's great. And then just some company feedback as well. Obviously, it's a great support for Irish companies and EI companies. in particular. A good thing to remind people about GradStart actually is that LEO companies can apply for it as well. So this isn't just an EI support, it's also a local enterprise office support as well. So if there's a small business or whatever and they want to take on somebody, they can avail of it as well. It just, they can only have one at a time. So I just like to say thanks to Dundalk for having us. It's fantastic to be able to come on and talk about the program and the GradStart support as well. And I'll take any questions. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
That's great, Johnny. Thanks so much for taking us through the GradStart opportunities, and I think might have introduced the idea to students who may not be aware of it, and maybe clarified the experience as well for those who are understanding here's my role in this, either being an employer or being a student themselves. So just on that point, if you had a company that you were particularly interested in working to, and they were either working in a local or being supported by the local enterprise office and being an Irish SME, can you approach them and say GradStart is available to you? Is that something that you can do?
Technically, grads are allowed to tell Irish companies that it's available and to make them aware of it for their own gain. What I would say though is graduates can't apply themselves to Enterprise Ireland for a company. So what a grad could do is they could go to a company and say, look, listen, I'd like to work for you. You can avail of this GradStart support. I just need you to put in the application through your development advisor in Enterprise Ireland. So they can do that, but they can't put in the application themselves.
Yeah, the application has to go through the company, but they can encourage a company to avail of that opportunity.
Yeah.
Great. Some questions are coming through for both of you. So Sean, I might bring it back to both the national and international graduate program, and I'm sure you've whetted plenty of appetites and got maybe the juices going in terms of putting the application form together. But there is a question that has come in from Janet around salary scales, and maybe you could just clarify what that would be for either one of the programs.
Yeah, no problem at all. So I suppose our graduates, both on a national basis and international, they start at just under 28k as their base salary, and then in their second year, so that's for the first year, in their second year, then it goes up to a couple of k, it goes up just under 30k. So for the national program, for example, those based in Ireland, that's kind of that is their salary for the 2 years, 28 and then 30. Those overseas have that base salary, but they also, as I mentioned in my presentation, they get allowances on top of that. And like those allowances, the allowances are quite significant, and it can depend, obviously. So if we send grads, there's 3 grads going off to London, for example, this year. London's quite expensive to rent, so the grads are completely taken care of from a rental point of view and a living point of view. They get additional allowances, and then certain countries are, I suppose, a little bit less dependent on their cost of living. But the internationals, I suppose, would in their pocket will get a lot more based on the fact that they're relocating overseas. So we expatriate them.
Perfect, makes sense, and good also to encourage that maybe there would be concerns from applicants around being able to move to another country, and could they afford that? So it's good to have that built in. Connected to that in terms of applications, and you mentioned it's really important to look at the wide spectrum of your experience, Sean, when you're making your application. So what you studied in college, the projects connected to that, understanding what EI is and how you fit into that, and also your extracurricular. From being involved in the program, what are the applications that I suppose stand out? What are the applicants doing who do sort of make it to that shortlist? What are they doing in particular that you think would be useful for any potential applicant to take account of today?
Yeah, I think like back to the first point, it's understanding Enterprise Ireland. Again, we want people that are passionate about helping Irish companies. That's our purpose. That's why we exist as a state agency, is to help Irish business. So people that understand that and are passionate about helping Irish businesses grow internationally. And if you can get that across, I mean, you don't have to necessarily have experience working with Enterprise Ireland, but if you do know of somebody that started their own business, or an Irish SME, or you've seen the impact of, how an SME in a region that you're from has really helped with employment, show that in your application. That's what we want to see. As well as that, like you mentioned, the extracurricular really show us that, because oftentimes, you know, you could have the best degree on paper and then just put no effort in or have no extracurricular, and come with the assessment centers when we're interviewing, you mightn't come across the strongest. So there's been plenty of cases of mediocre degrees or results or whatever, and they've been really strong in a hobby or a sport, and you know, they've showcased to us, you know, their ability, and they're capable, and then it's come across in the assessment center. So I would really hone in on those things, and as well engaging at things like this, at the career fair, and thanking us, asking questions, connecting on LinkedIn, engaging with our socials. Like, it's all picked up on. The application process is scored fairly from an external provider, but I mean, we know those have engaged and those have put in a bit more effort than others, because there are going to be naturally a lot of grads that are superstars on paper, and they might apply for 12 programs, but really they have no interest in our specific one. So we can weed that out towards the end of the assessments.
Yeah, so you've heard it here, everybody. So those who are listening live and those who are maybe streaming later on demand, it is important to make that connection. That every connection is counted towards, and that effort of reaching out or going that extra piece of research will make an impact on your application form. So thanks for sort of giving us a little bit more of an insight into that, Sean. There's some questions coming through here in terms of DKT students maybe working with your graduates in the past. Are either of you aware of any connections either with companies within the region or students who have progressed through either of the programs?
Johnny, do you want to take that from the grad start side? I'm not sure if you're aware.
Yeah, well, kind of in the, excuse me, sorry. in the Northeast, we do have a lot of client companies that apply for grad start. So I would imagine, I can't get the numbers on Dundalk IT students, but I'd imagine there are a few in there that have availed of grad start through that region. So we kind of do all the applications regionally. It'll pop up kind of what counties they're in, but I would imagine kind of a lot of our client companies would be up there in Louth and around there. And I would say they're definitely taking on Dundalk IT students, and I wouldn't be surprised if there are 4 or 5 examples of graduates going into companies under the grad start program.
And hopefully more after today, Johnny. I suppose the idea really is that we are an SME rich region here, Louth, Meath, Cavan, North County Dublin. So it is something that I think will resonate with applicants and with students. So it's good to keep that in mind.
And what I'd say also is, just as a region, it's fantastic. We have the Northeast Spotlight and Skills program coming up just outside of grad start, and the Northeast is always oversubscribed in terms of their engagement with client skills and the importance that they place on it. It's definitely one of the more engaged regions. So it's great to see from that point of view as well.
There is a question coming through here in terms of a student, Ger, who is interested particularly in renewable energy projects. I suppose maybe, I don't know who is best placed, but maybe Johnny or maybe Sean, I'm not too sure if you want to take that.
Yeah, well, I suppose I can speak on behalf of our internal functions from Enterprise Ireland point of view. We certainly do, I suppose, in terms of renewable energy projects, most of the work would revolve around helping clients with those pieces of work rather than our own, obviously. So yes, we have a sector there, industrial, life sciences and consumer, and it kind of looks after environmental services. So that falls under there. And we've a lot of companies going for different contracts, the ESA and different bodies. So it would be, I suppose, a case of being assigned to that sector or getting involved through, you know, speaking to the development advisors and speaking internally and getting involved with client companies in that sector. But yeah, it's an option from a client-facing point of view of some of the type of companies. Look, we work with, aside from gambling companies for obvious reasons, we work with companies across all sectors. So yeah, there's definitely scope there.
Yeah. Okay. So there's opportunities there, Ger. So that's great, guys. Sorry for the delayed start. We have now, I suppose, reached the end of the presentation time frame. I think you have maybe given us lots of food for thought in terms of both of your different aspects, but Enterprise Ireland as an overall company and how they're working to support enterprise within Ireland and support graduate and placement opportunity for students. So thanks very much for your time, and get ready for the inbox to be full of DKIT applications.
No problem at all. Thanks so much, Catherine and all for your time. Really appreciate it and enjoyed it. So yeah, feel free to reach out to myself or Johnny if you've any questions going forward, and we'll speak to you soon.
Lovely. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.